"You're not in the will anymore," said Marcus, the family attorney, without blinking. "They said you wouldn't take it well." I didn't, but I didn't take it loud either. I took it personally. My name is Luca Romano. I'm 38 years old. Born in Palermo, raised in Jersey. First one in my family to graduate college. First one to ever wear a tie by choice. I didn't get here by accident. I got here by surviving the kind of family dinners where people spoke with their hands and settled scores in silence. For the last 12 years, I've been the director of compliance at Belamonte Capital, a private equity firm in Manhattan that built its empire flipping struggling companies into Wall Street trophies. I was the guy who read the fine print nobody else had the patience for, who made sure no one went to jail when the numbers started looking too optimistic. Everyone smiled in front of the press. I cleaned the fingerprints backstage. But Belamonte wasn't just a job. It was blood. My uncle Giancarlo Romano was one of the founding partners. Immigrated from Italy in the late 70s, shoes falling apart, but with a watch that never lost a second. They called him the architect, the kind of man who could make a deal feel like a favor. He gave me my shot right out of law school, said, "Luca, never forget, loyalty buys more time than talent." I didn't. I gave that man everything. Late nights, early flights. I missed Nona's funeral because I was auditing a client in Austin. I canceled a proposal trip to Lake Tahoe with my girlfriend. She left me 2 weeks later, said I love spreadsheets more than people. Maybe she was right. But I never missed a call from Giancarlo. Never questioned an ask. I was there when his second wife left him. I was there when his son Marco got arrested and he needed things handled discreetly. I even turned down a partnership offer from a firm in Chicago because he asked me to stay close. "Your time will come," he always said. "When the dust settles, it's you I trust." So when I got the call that he'd passed, heart attack, alone in his brownstone, I already knew things were about to shift. I just didn't expect the funeral to feel so rehearsed. Marco was all smiles, hugging people he never liked. The same cousin who used to call me the secretary in front of clients now introduced himself as the heir to the Romano legacy. The air was thick with cologne and pretending, and I stood there in the back row, suit a little too tight from the stress weight I'd put on, wondering why no one had said anything to me about the estate. 2 weeks later, I found out why. When Belamonte Capital started, it was a glorified hustle in a borrowed office above a Greek bakery in Queens. 3 desks, 2 investors, one espresso machine that only Giancarlo knew how to fix. But it had ambition, and more than that, it had him. I still remember the first acquisition I helped close, a failing logistics company with more lawsuits than trucks. Giancarlo told me, "Every broken thing can be valuable if you learn where it bends before it breaks." I built the risk model that saved the deal. He said nothing, just nodded. But the next day, my name was on the internal memo. That meant more than a raise. Year after year, Belamonte grew, from a 6-man operation to a $2.3 billion portfolio. We went from fixing balance sheets to controlling entire markets. And in every investor dinner, every year-end speech, Giancarlo made it clear, this firm is family. And I believed him. Turns out, family doesn't always mean blood. Sometimes it means blueprint. And I was the one who drew it. It started small. Giancarlo had been out sick for a week. Nothing serious, they said, just exhaustion. But the tone in the office shifted fast. I noticed Marco, his son, walking in and out of meetings that used to be mine. I asked about the audit reports. No one answered directly. I brushed it off. Then came the password resets. My access to the private folders? Gone. Tech glitch, said HR. Funny. The glitch only seemed to affect me. I wasn't included in the latest investor review. I was told my presence wasn't needed at the offsite in Miami, the same offsite I used to organize. That was when I noticed my name wasn't listed on the internal org chart anymore. Still, I showed up, did the work, advised the junior partners. I acted like it was a phase, that they were just trying to reorganize things until Giancarlo came back. But he didn't. He collapsed in his office 3 days before his 69th birthday, died before the ambulance arrived, and that's when the silence got loud. Marco took over the meetings instantly, wore his father's cufflinks like they were a crown. He stopped calling me cuz and started calling me Luca. Just Luca. Formal. Cold. I asked about the estate. He said the lawyers would be in touch. Then I found myself sitting across from Marcus, the firm's attorney, in a private conference room that suddenly felt unfamiliar. That's when he said it. "You're not in the will anymore." Just like that. 15 years. Gone. "They said you wouldn't take it well," he added, like he was talking about a movie ending I didn't like. He handed me a thin folder with one printed sentence. "Mr. Romano's participation in Bellomonte Capital Holdings is considered terminated as of May 3rd. No thank you, no explanation, no closure, just the click of a door behind me." I didn't scream. I didn't storm the office. I didn't even text Marco. Instead, I went home, poured myself a drink, and pulled out an old manila folder I hadn't touched in 6 years. One Giancarlo had given me after we closed the Lasker deal. "Use this only if they forget who built the walls," he'd said. Inside, documents, email threads, a full ownership structure breakdown. Turns out not all of Giancarlo's assets were in the official will. Some were shielded, some were held in shell companies I helped him create. And one of them, quietly and legally, was still under my name. A holding company tied to a real estate project in Miami worth $12 million. I didn't call Marcus. I didn't argue. I just filed a motion through a third-party attorney, then another. I sent 2 polite letters, one to the SEC, one to an old contact in the Department of Financial Oversight. No accusations, just observations, irregularities in reporting, overlap of interests, minor things, unless someone looked deeper. By Friday, Bellomonte's internal Slack lit up. A junior partner messaged me, "Something's going on. Marco looks like he saw a ghost." I didn't reply. They expected me to vanish. Instead, I became the silence they couldn't trace. It was a Tuesday. I was having espresso alone at Rigoletto's, same corner cafe I used to bring Giancarlo to after long meetings, when a voice behind me said, "Luca Romano, as I live and breathe." I turned and saw her, Celeste Donnelly, former lead counsel at Vestrix Group. We'd gone head-to-head years ago during a brutal acquisition war, respected rivals. She didn't sit down, just slid a business card onto the table with a smile. "We should talk." 2 days later, I was sitting in a private conference room at Donnelly and Crown, staring at a folder titled Project Revival. Inside, outlines, numbers, strategies, and a list of investors. Familiar names. Too familiar. Celeste leaned forward. "Bellomonte's bleeding. Quietly, but it's happening. They lost 3 key accounts. One pulled out the day after you were removed. We didn't orchestrate it, but we're listening. You, however, you know how to finish this." She offered me full authority to build a new arm under her firm, an asset reclamation unit, not just cleaning up failed deals, but restoring legacy contracts, and she wanted me to lead it. "Your name will open doors faster than any pitch," she said, "but only if you're willing to walk through them." I asked for 48 hours. I didn't need them, because that night Marco sent me a message. "We need to talk." I ignored it. Next came a call from Marcus. Straight to voicemail, then an email. "Let's resolve this before it escalates further." I didn't answer. Instead, I drafted a press release for Donnelly and Crown's new division. The tagline, "Reclaiming Value, Restoring Trust." By the end of the week, 2 of Bellomonte's oldest clients were in direct talks with us. Not poached, not coerced, just disillusioned. And they remembered. They remembered who called when their contracts were on fire, who flew out to negotiate when others sent interns, who showed up in courtrooms and boardrooms when things got ugly. They remembered me. And as the calls kept coming, as Bellomonte's numbers dipped, as Luca Romano became a headline in finance blogs again, I didn't celebrate. I worked. Quiet, focused, effective. Because revenge wasn't the goal. Redefining the game was. It started with a rumor, a compliance leak, a financial review, a missing document in the Lasker file. Within a week, Bellomonte Capital's name went from industry leader to trending topic in legal forums. Reports surfaced of irregularities, vague enough to avoid headlines, sharp enough to rattle investors. Then came the board resignations. Quiet, strategic, too close together to be coincidence. The Miami real estate project, Frozen, the Brazil expansion, canceled, and Marco? He vanished from LinkedIn. One day his profile read, managing partner. The next, nothing. I heard from Valerie, Belamonte's former executive assistant, the only one who ever spoke to me with genuine respect. She messaged me late at night. You didn't even raise your voice, and still, everything is falling apart. They tried to blame me, of course. Said I sabotaged confidential infrastructure. Funny, I didn't touch a single system. I just knew where the cracks already were. And I let time apply pressure. The SEC came next. Quiet inquiries, background checks. Marcus, the firm's attorney, was suddenly on sabbatical. Giancarlo's name was brought up in a shareholder call. Not with respect, but with liability. The firm tried to pivot, hired crisis PR, swapped logos, launched a new diversity initiative. But it was too late, because Belamonte didn't just lose money, it lost memory. And in a business built on trust, memory is currency. The clients walked. The partners turned on each other. What they thought was an empire was just scaffolding I had stopped holding up. And me? I stayed silent. There's nothing louder than a legacy walking away without looking back. The document arrived in a plain white envelope, no return address. Just my name, typed in all caps. Inside, a printed email thread, 7 pages long, from the firm's private internal server. Not leaked, gifted. I still don't know by who, but I have my suspicions. The subject line on the first page? Exit strategy, Romano. It started months before Giancarlo died. Marco, Marcus, and 2 junior partners laying out how to strategically retire me without triggering scrutiny. They knew about my connection to clients. They knew removing me directly could cause instability, so they planned around it. They adjusted internal workflows to isolate me, shifted client accounts to new faces, started cutting me out of compliance meetings under the pretext of streamlining. They even timed it with Giancarlo's illness. One of the emails actually said, if we wait until after his health declines, the optics are more controllable. That was Marco, the same cousin I shared bunk beds with during summer trips to Naples. The same guy I bailed out of a drunk driving arrest in college. And the final page? A memo suggesting I be excluded from the inheritance. No formal equity, no legal obligation. We'll frame it as a business decision. That one was from Marcus, the family attorney. I sat with the pages for over an hour. Didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. All this time I thought I'd been forgotten, pushed aside by neglect. But no, it was calculated. They didn't just remove me from the firm, they erased me from the family, and they thought I'd never find out. The next morning I met with Rena, my attorney at Donnelly & Crown. I laid out the papers. She didn't blink. This, she said, isn't just betrayal. This is ammunition. We filed 2 motions before lunch. One challenged the will based on coercion and fraudulent influence. The second, a formal complaint to the state bar against Marcus for unethical conduct and conflict of interest. The fallout was immediate. Marcus resigned within the week. Marco released a public statement, stepping back to reflect. Belamonte's remaining partners launched an emergency investigation to ensure internal transparency. But what mattered most, more than the legal win, more than the validation, was a call I received one night at 10:41 p.m. It was from Sophia Romano, Giancarlo's first wife, the woman who raised me when my own parents couldn't. Her voice was shaking. Luca, he never meant to leave you out. I saw a note he wrote, said you were the only one he ever trusted. That night I cried for the first time in years, not because I was hurt, because I finally knew. I wasn't wrong to believe in him. They just hijacked the ending. But now, the story was mine again. I didn't rebuild out of rage. I rebuilt because I finally understood what power actually looks like. It's not loud. It's not titles or suits or initials on a door. It's the way people lean in when you speak. The calls that come at midnight because you're the only one they trust to fix something delicate. It's the respect that walks in before your name is said. At Donnelly & Crown, I wasn't just given a division. I was given space. No layers of red tape, no performance theater. I rewrote the client playbook from scratch, ditch the scripts, kill the jargon, bring back handshakes and real conversations. I trained the new team myself. No stage, no slides, just a whiteboard and my scars. And I didn't recruit based on resumes. I brought in survivors, people like Andrea, a paralegal from a collapsed firm who knew what it was like to be overlooked, or Jonas, a finance analyst who was once called too soft for client negotiations, but knew how to listen better than anyone I'd met. We weren't shiny, but we were sharp, fast, focused, and soon the results started to show. Former Belamonte clients, the ones who'd been treated like line items, began migrating to our side, quietly at first, then publicly. Some of them didn't even wait for their contracts to expire. They just called and said, "We trust you. Just tell us where to sign." Internally, they started calling us the quiet return, not because we made noise, but because we brought people back to what mattered. Maya, the COO, pulled me aside one evening and said, "You changed this place without changing your tone. That's rare." I didn't answer, just nodded. She understood. Even Sophia, Giancarlo's widow, joined as an advisor to help restore the Romano Foundation, which had been neglected after his death. I made sure her voice was heard in every strategy session. That was never about business. That was about honor. And for the first time in years, I felt at peace walking into work. No anxiety, no tension, just purpose. The kind that doesn't need permission, the kind that doesn't need applause, the kind that comes after everything's been taken, and you still choose to build. Not to prove something, but to build something that outlives the noise. The email subject line read, "Proposal for strategic merger, private and confidential." It was from Castellan Group, one of the largest financial conglomerates on the East Coast. The kind of firm that didn't knock, they bought the door. They were offering a full acquisition of Donnelly and Crown's new division, the one I built. With one condition, I would lead the merger, not as a symbolic figure, as president, full authority, final word, over both sides. At first I laughed. Then I read the second attachment, a breakdown of Castellan's current leadership, and my eyes stopped on one name, Marco Romano, listed as Senior Integration Advisor. So that's what he had become. Not a partner, not a visionary, a consultant, floating on title fumes and past relevance. Still, I didn't say no, not yet. I met with Castellan's board, room full of polished shoes and sharper smiles. They pitched synergy, brand consolidation, unified market expansion, all the buzzwords that once made me nauseous. And when they asked what it would take for me to say yes, I didn't flinch. No legacy executives from Belamonte in operational control, full veto power over team structure, and I bring my people with me, all of them. They blinked, whispered, then nodded. Deal closed in 11 days. The same week I moved into the new office, the glass walls and skyline view. I walked past Marco in the corridor. He was in a suit 2 sizes too expensive, surrounded by 3 younger analysts pretending to admire his opinion. He saw me, did a double take, paused. "Luca," I smiled politely, extended my hand. "Welcome aboard." No venom, no smugness, just balance. Because I wasn't there to humiliate anyone. I was there to build something clean, solid, real, something Belamonte never was. At the first leadership roundtable, I stood at the head of the table, not because I demanded it, but because they waited for me to speak. And this time, I wasn't speaking for Giancarlo. I wasn't defending my seat. I wasn't explaining my value. I was setting the terms, with my voice, my rules, my name on the door, name on. It was strange walking back into the original Belamonte building. Not because I missed it, but because it didn't feel like a memory anymore. It felt like a closed chapter I now owned the rights to. I was there for a quarterly strategy session. Castellan had absorbed Belamonte's remaining assets, and part of the integration required a full walkthrough of all operational units, including the flagship office in Midtown. The building hadn't changed. Same sterile lobby, same marble floors, same elevator delay on the 7th floor. But the energy? Different. This time, I wasn't standing outside with a box in my hand. I was holding a leather-bound folder labeled Romano Strategic Directives. As I passed the front desk, the receptionist stood up. Same girl from years ago. Her eyes widened and she whispered almost involuntarily, "Mr. Romano, welcome back." Funny how quickly people remember when the wind shifts. I didn't gloat, just nodded and moved on. Upstairs, I stepped into the boardroom that once echoed with the sound of my silence. The table was full. Compliance officers, integration managers, Castellan directors, all waiting for my word on the transition. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't remind anyone of the past. But when I spoke, everyone took notes. There was no trace of Marco. His name hadn't appeared in any of the reports for weeks. Last I heard, he'd taken a sabbatical in Europe. Rumor had it he was pitching startups in Lisbon. I felt nothing. That part of me, the one that craved justice in his face, was long gone. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. Walking out that day, I passed the same hallway where Marcus once handed me the thin envelope and said, "You're not in the will anymore." Now, every corridor I stepped through whispered the opposite. This never worked without you. And I didn't need to say a word. I never wanted a statue. I wanted continuity. So I built something that wouldn't need my face to function, just my principles. I created the Romano Initiative, a mentorship and funding program for first-generation professionals with immigrant backgrounds. No empty speeches, just opportunities, just access. The first fellow? A kid from Queens named Matteo De Luca, son of a delivery driver. Showed up to the interview in a second-hand suit, eyes full of fire. He reminded me of me, but hungrier. He shadowed my meetings, sat in on real negotiations, wrote his first client contract by hand because it helped him think. When we signed our biggest deal that quarter, he was the one who delivered the closing packet. And as we walked out of that boardroom, he looked at me and said, "You built this for guys like me, didn't you?" I smiled, not because he got it, because he'd be the one to carry it forward. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand anything. And still, they felt it, because real legacy doesn't need volume. It needs substance, the kind that stays long after your name's been whispered and long after theirs has been forgotten.